What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Realms of Metal. We got a special episode for you guys today, man. We've got Vincent Crowley in the house. I got to be honest with you. I just shot him an email yesterday on a whim to see if he'd be interested in coming on and doing an interview with us. And he responded back right away. Man, he's totally into it. And he's a death metal hero of mine and been a fan since Rites of the Black Mass when it came out when I was a kid. Vincent, man, thanks for being on the show today, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man. Pleasure to be here.
So the new record, Beyond Acheron, your solo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Loving that record. It's one of those records that, like, to me, has a feel to it. You know, I love records that have a feel. It's got like this dark gothic kind of feel to it, musically, lyrically. Um, Tell me about the songwriting process between that and like what you did with Acheron.
Well, Acheron was basically, when it came out, we got labeled black or death metal. That was kind of like in the days where people didn't really have the labels all, because I always thought if we were going to be labeled, it'd be black metal because satanic lyrics and, Venom but you just kind of go with the punches then. And, that was more of that aggressive, old school, influenced by Sodom and Venom and Bathory and, all those type of bands.
Right.
And I guess bands like us were like that next level of, era of metal in the underground.
Right.
Um, you know, I pretty much followed a pretty true to the nature path for the sound of the band. For I did a little bit of different things, experiment here and there, but I tried to keep Acheron to sound like it would be an Acheron album in some way, shape, or form, not just totally change it. This new band, it's funny because when I was talking to the labels for the new album we're getting ready to have out, they were like, yeah, we're very interested, but we don't know what to put category to put you in.
Right.
And I understood because especially nowadays you can't consider this stuff death metal, because even though back in the day, maybe if it would have came out in the 90s, it might have been labeled death metal, but nowadays definitely not.
Yeah.
Influences now, a lot of real old school stuff, like, Candlemass and Merciful Fate and King Diamond, stuff like that. But then my vocals are still kind of the old Celtic Frost, Venom, and,
Yep.
Even old Creator and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I wanted this to kind of take me back to the times when I started and all the influences, and not just write songs that were, either just dark or aggressive, but had a darkness with melodies and catchiness and stuff like that.
Totally.
But
Beautiful solos on this record. Very moody solos, emotional solos. Now, does Art write the solos?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he does a great job, man.
Yeah. Art was in Acheron, the very last album, called This Hospice.
Yep.
And we had worked together for quite a while. And we started writing music towards the ending of the Acheron time. And we even tried to demo some stuff. Some problems happened in the studio. And then we were like, I don't know if this really sounds like Acheron. And we decided let's just play live shows. And when Acheron basically broke up in late 2018, we continued to work together, and both of us worked on all these songs, and, kind of a magic happened when we did.
Yeah. Now, I had seen in one of your videos, I've been checking out all your stuff. By the way, you got a great YouTube channel. Your Q&As are awesome. Your dungeon is fucking awesome. Like, if I die, I want to be like putting an urn and putting your fucking dungeon on a shelf somewhere.
Appreciate it, man.
But like the songwriting process, like you decided that you wanted to end Acheron because you said you've done all you feel you've needed to do with it, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, when the band came out, you know, my love for the music was, you know, first and most important. But you know, I wanted to do a truly satanic band, and I think back then there wasn't very many bands doing that. If there were, you know, it was like tongue in cheek stuff that weren't really into it, and
Right.
I wanted to kind of do something that was like legit and serious, and you know, present it. You know, after all these years, the whole satanic thing is almost commercialized now. You
Yeah.
know, I remember if you wore an upside down cross out in public, you know, everybody would freak out. Now it's like you can pretty much wear beheaded Jesuses and no one even bats a lash over it. You know,
Right.
um, I just think there's bands that are doing it now that are killer and they do it great. New bands that are taking their approach, some crappy bands that are doing it and you know taking it to a shitty direction. I'll let them have fun with it for a while. I had 30 years of this time to do something
Yeah, I
else.
hear you, man. I hear you. But I love those, those old Deicide records, the old Morbid Angel records. I'm sure you do too.
Oh
Being
yeah,
from Florida, right? Like that, you were part of that whole scene. You know all those guys. You've
yeah,
hung with those
absolutely.
guys, did shows with those guys.
I mean, you know, Morbid Angel. I mean, I remember Morbid Angel when they were first, you know, starting, and they, you know, they had a demo out that didn't even have death metal type vocals.
Yeah,
um, you know, all those bands there came up, and I mean, it was just amazing music coming out at that time. And being in Florida, we literally practiced right next door to Morbid Angel in Tampa and
yeah,
saw them all the time.
yeah.
And you know, Deicide was always, you know, entertaining when we get to see them and hang out. And yeah, it was good times back then.
Cool. Now, all the satanic lyrics aside, of all the bands with these satanic imagery and lyrics and stuff, what percentage of them were serious about that? Like, is it just like a shtick, or were they really serious about that religion?
You know, I really didn't like get too deep into that kind of stuff with, you know, a lot of people unless they really brought up. One thing I could say is, you know, I know Trey and David were into the occult. You know, Dave, they both were like into the whole satanic philosophy, at least at one point.
Yeah,
Um, Glenn kind of, he's always hated Christianity. I
I'm
mean,
sure. Yeah,
I mean, that's not a gimmick.
right.
Whether the whole nowadays he said the whole satanic thing was a gimmick, but you know, at least he presented himself, you know, entertainingly
Yeah,
with it. I mean, I don't know how you can burn a cross on your forehead upside down and not be into something.
I couldn't believe that as a kid. Like, as a kid, like you just, you take things very seriously. Like, oh, damn, look at that guy did. It's like, geez. But he
Right.
just seems like a cool, like, Harley riding, beer swilling kind of guy, at least these days. But
Yeah, he's always, you know, you know, you hear weird stories about Glenn, like he's an asshole or he's a dick or whatever. Glenn gets in moods, you know. I mean, every time I've pretty much, you know, saw him or hung out, he's always been really cool. And actually, he has a very good sense of humor. So
yeah.
it's to get to see that part is pretty cool.
You ever get, I'm sure you have, ever get to hang out and talk with like Chuck Schuldiner, do shows with Death?
Actually, when I was in the band Nocturnus, we did one or two, I can't remember. It was one or two shows with Death, like pre leprosy, at this small place called the Sunset Club.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I love Death. You know, we used to check them out all the time. Funny thing is, when I moved up north later on to start Acheron, and when I came back, I moved to Orlando, and that's where Chuck was living. And I used to bump into him at the mall like all the time. I go
Yeah.
check out the bookstore for occult books and stuff, and I'd see. Funny thing is, I remember one time I saw him at an arcade. He was playing some game, and he had all these little metalhead kids like around him, like a little cult. It was like pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was cool. He was a very laid back guy. I didn't know him very well, but you know, definitely spoke to him here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that scene was electric back then, like, with all the bands, Obituary and, Massacre and, like, how was the scene back then? I mean, I'm sure it was buzzing, right? I mean,
Yeah, it was pretty cool to actually see it kind of morph into what it became.
yeah.
Because I remember when Execute or Obituary was Executioner. I can remember seeing a show when John Tardy had hair not even to his shoulder, spitting black blood, and Hell Witch playing with them, and Nasty Savage and all those bands. And the scene just kind of. The funny thing is, I left Florida after I quit Nocturnus and moved up to Pittsburgh. When I left, I had talked to Mike Browning from Nocturnus, and he goes, "Man, you left at the wrong time. Everybody's just fucking blowing up here."
Yeah.
And eventually I came back home, but it was definitely a bigger scene when I came back.
Yeah, those two death metal scenes, the Florida death metal scene and then the Stockholm, Sweden scene seem to be the two biggest, right? As far as the explosion of death metal in the early 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Anywhere else that you think kind of maybe on par with that or close?
Well, New York had its, explosion too. I mean, Immolation and Revenant and Incantation was even back then. And
I was lucky enough as a kid, like in the early 90s, mid 90s, Morpheus Descends was a local band for me. And I used to see them all the time. I mean, that record, Ritual of Infinity, is like a cult classic these days, and I know those guys and I've seen them, a ton of times. So I had a great local scene here too back in the 90s where I lived.
I think there were definitely scenes. I mean, I heard Texas had a scene, California has a scene. It's just that some just kind of blew up more than others. I always said our Tampa scene was kind of like the glam metal scene was in LA. It was so kind of publicized. But the fact is, there's a lot of metal going on, but it wasn't like, Glenn Benton and fucking George Fisher, walking down the street all the time. And, everybody lives their lives, does their own thing.
Yeah.
But there was a record store in Tampa called Aces Records. Yep. And you could meet anybody at any time. Someone would pop into that store, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, we have a local record store out this way. The guy's been open forever. It's called Rock Fantasy in Middletown, New York. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
But the guy's name is Steve, and he's been doing a metal store forever, man. The guy's he's a legend around here. So
that's killer.
Probably similar to Aces.
Yeah, for sure.
So the songwriting process in the Vincent Crowley band, you go in with riffs and then you and Art work out the music, or do you have something in mind lyrically first and then build around that? Or
for the most part, like Art and I kind of come up with our own songs, and then we kind of build on that. Art, I think, like working together so much, we have differences in our writing, but they also mesh together well, where, it's not like this sounds totally off compared to the other song. I think all the songs kind of flow well.
Yeah.
Cool thing about the stuff Art's writing is I'll listen to it, and if I get a vibe, I within 5 minutes, I'll know exactly what topic I'm going to do it about. Right. This one seems like some kind of dark whatever, and it's just lyrically I kind of boom, and it's goes really well. It's funny because the name Vincent Crowley we use, it's not supposed to be really a solo band. It's almost like what King Diamond did after Merciful Fate.
Yep.
It's pretty much more than a band that even Acheron was, because Acheron, I use so many musicians within recordings. This one is like an actually pretty solid lineup that I've had for the most part since the beginning, and we incorporate all our ideas together, and it's definitely a group effort, and I really enjoy doing it like this.
Now the lineup on this record is you, Art, and Ryan Arter on drums,
right?
But you have a bass player too. Is it Tim Wilson? Is that his name? Is he a permanent member of the band?
Yeah, he actually is going to be on the new album, the Anthology of Horror album coming out on Hammerheart Records. The first album, it was Art and I had the songs, and we found Ryan to play drums. And at the time, we didn't have any people interested in the band or anything, and we didn't even know what to call the band. That's how Vincent Crowley kind of just manifested.
Yeah,
it was just, let's try this. We self-financed the album. We went in the studio and just like swung in the dark and hoped to hit something.
Sounds great.
So Art and I, both did bass on there, just shared the work and to get it done. And after that, we added, actually on that album you have, the US release.
Yep.
We added a guitarist named Eric Stewart, who who actually plays on the bonus tracks on those songs.
I saw that. And is he a permanent member of the band as well?
Yeah, he's a permanent member. And then we got Tim, and finally we got somebody permanent for bass. So everything's going pretty good right now.
Good. Like everybody out there, pick up this record. See if you can pick up the special edition with the bonus tracks because they're totally worth it. I mean, that track, Awakening the Four Horsemen, is it's got thrashy parts in it, man. It's great. What a great track. And then Thy Father's Suicide was an Acheron track, right? It was on Cultus Hasis.
Yeah, it's funny. Both those songs, Awakening the Four Horsemen was one of the songs we were writing back with Acheron. And we kind of just revamped it and kind of made it our own style. And Thy Father's Suicide, there's a couple things I didn't do on the original recording on Cultus Hasis, and I was like, it's a bonus track. Let's just do it the way I really wanted to do it, and it came out cool. So
yeah, it came out amazing.
And
so I know you're working on new stuff, and the name of your new record is called Anthology of Horror, and it's coming out early next year.
Yeah, it'll be out in probably February on Hammerheart Records.
And you said it was horror themed.
Yes.
So you got like different ideas, like based on movies or horror icons or what, anything like that?
It's kind of based on movies, books, stories, stuff I've made up. It's just like a bunch of themes. Actually, our cover has it's like a fold out that's kind of like a compilation of all the song ideas meshed in artwork, which include the big part of the Amityville house on the front cover. So, which was
I love the Amityville Horror, one of my favorites of all time. Scared the shit out of me as a kid too.
Yeah, it was a great one. So this one's like taking a little bit more of my influence of horror, where the first album was more, there was horror elements to it, but it was basically themes of death and stories about death, where this is kind of going more towards, grim stories and stuff like that.
Cool. I noticed in your, I wanted to show this to you. In your dungeon, you had one of these. I got the same one. One of the signed Gunnar Hansen's.
Yeah.
And this was back in like the early 2000s. I got this. So when did you get yours?
The same time. In fact, it's funny because I took a picture with him and something happened with the camera and I had to take another one. Some of these people, they're assholes about doing that. And he was totally cool. And then we got into a conversation and he was telling me all about him being a novelist and writing books and all this stuff. And really cool guy. And it was a pleasure definitely to meet him.
Yeah. Who were some of your horror icons, like, actors or whatever that you think? I know Vincent Price is one of them.
Oh, absolutely. Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, all those old Bela Lugosi, Peter Cushing, all the classics.
All the Hammer stuff.
Yeah, love Hammer.
Yep. And like going back on that and then looking at it later, how cool is it to see Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, doing in Star Wars, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's
like a reunion, not that they like did scenes together, but just to see them both in a Star Wars movie was pretty killer. So,
and Christopher Lee doing a metal album, that was fucking classic.
I know. I like Tony Todd, he's a hero of mine.
Absolutely.
A lot of the women like Barbara Crampton, I really love Barbara Hershey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's an endless amount of great actors and stuff out there.
Yeah. So how many songs do you have done for the new record? And like, when are you going into the studio, or have you recorded some parts already?
Oh, it's done. It's actually been done for several months now. We're just like waiting for the process of the label. Nowadays to get vinyl pressed, it's a long process.
Yeah.
So, that's why we missed the end of the year date by a couple weeks. So that's why it ended up getting pushed to the beginning of next year. But there's 8 songs, all sorts of different themes, and it definitely came out way better than we anticipated. Great, so man, I think people will be surprised how much the band has evolved since the first album.
Do you have artwork and everything done for it already too?
Yeah, everything's I actually just proofread it a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
so it's getting ready to go to the press.
I know vinyl takes a while now because vinyl's in such high demand. Like vinyl's like this resurgence is back, and I know it takes a while to get your stuff pressed and done these days.
Yeah, when we released the double vinyl on Hellhammer Records in the States for the first album, he did such a great job, but you know, he wanted to use the best press plant and stuff, and it delayed the release for a long time. That's why we end up doing bonus tracks for that, because Odium Records released the album in Europe already, and he was doing the American, and they already had the head start on sales and stuff, and he needed something to kind of motivate people to buy the new stuff.
Yeah, let me tell you, this version is beautiful. They did a phenomenal job with it. The vinyls look beautiful. It sounds beautiful. I mean, the whole layout and the artwork is amazing. So they did a really great job. They really did.
Funny thing is, the owner of Hellhammer Records has been a friend of mine for years, and he actually worked at Aces Records back when he was a teenager, and now he's doing pretty good in Maine with his own job. And
yeah,
he started that label just to put that album out. So
no kidding. And that's your label now. Like that's your label that you're on.
No, we have similar sounding labels. He just did the American release for the first album.
Okay.
We're now on Hammerheart Records.
Hammerheart, okay.
Yeah, from Holland now.
And that's who's doing the new record.
Yeah.
Okay. And how are those guys been so far working with Hammerheart?
So far, they've been great. You know, they originally wanted to sign Acheron for many years, and I wasn't into doing another Acheron album. And when I sent them some of the songs from the first album, they were really into it and decided to, you know, take a chance. So yeah, we're looking forward to working with them.
Awesome. So, I mean, you've accomplished so much in your career. I mean, you've been doing this since what, the mid 80s, 85, yeah. 86.
Yeah.
Right. 27 years into it. Like, what do you feel like is your biggest accomplishment? Like, what are you most proud of? I know you're still doing it, you know, but what are you most proud of thus far in your career that you've done?
I'm just proud that I'm still able to do it, you know.
Perseverance, yeah.
You know, every year I can honestly say I would go, okay, when's it going to end? When's no one going to pick up an album? When's no one going to show up to a show? When's that death call for, you know, musicians come? Luckily, we've had some really cool fans and really pushed us and supported us and my music. You know, I've done different stuff. I did projects like Wolfen Society and Infidel Reich, and people follow there and support that stuff. It's different type of music, and it's just cool how the scene kind of supports each other.
Yeah. I checked out Infidel Reich. I mean, Wolfen Society is really good stuff. That video, what was it, Crush and Destroy?
Yeah.
Really great track that is, man. It's a banger for sure.
Yeah, we have fun doing it. We've done 3 albums. We're kind of on a hiatus now. We got some cancel culture issues, but the last album was really great to do. I actually did a song on the title track that me and Martin Von Druin from Asphyx kind of go back and forth, and it's just a great fucking album, I think.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I wanted to thank you for coming on, and I hope when the new record is released, you come back on. We could talk about the new record when it comes out.
Absolutely, man.
You know, I really appreciate you coming on. And what I say to all the musicians I meet is, you don't realize how the fans appreciate what you do. You know, your music is there, you know, through the good and the bad for all the fans. It's a constant, you know, and it's kind of like the backdrop to our lives. And I always say this to musicians, especially ones that mean a lot to me, you know, and just, you know, thank you for what you do, and please continue to keep doing it, man. And you'll get the support.
No, I appreciate that. Well, you have to understand it goes both ways. You know, without you guys, we can't do this. And, you know, one thing I've noticed, you know, when I started to get more active on my YouTube channel, I started to see all the, you know, the channels like yours and others that are promoting the metal and the underground, and it just brought me back to the old days of like writing letters and fanzines and stuff like that. It's just a more advanced version, and that's going to keep the scene alive, because other shit like, you know, Facebook and all that shit gets controlled and all that stuff.
I know.
And this, at least, we're kind of in charge of for the time being. And it's cool to see people like you fucking keeping the flame alive.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And in one of your videos, you said it was your wife who like prompted you to start this YouTube stuff because you weren't really a social media guy. My wife was the same way, because I'm kind of like an introvert, you know, but I'm passionate about metal, you know. So, and she's like, my wife is going, you know, you should start a metal channel. I think you would really enjoy it. And I took her word for it. I'm like, you know what? Let me just give it a shot. You know, I've been doing it since, you know, January, and I'm loving it. It's like a hobby of mine. It takes up a lot of my time, but you know, I don't care. I'm loving it. So
yeah, for sure. It's like, you know, like Facebook. I always post on there, but I'm trying to kind of promote, and it doesn't go anywhere. And, you know, I was always bitching about them. Like, man, I got to take my time just to post some shit, and only 10 people see it, or one time 100 people see it. You never know.
You never know.
And then, you know, my wife was like, you know, every time you come up with these stories and like act like it's like nothing and bring something up and somebody goes, what? And I'm like, I don't think secondly about it, because, you know, like you say, you know, I'll say something about playing with death, or, you know, hanging out with morbid, you know, shit
the
like
Bob
that.
Larson story.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, why don't you just go and answer people's questions and shit? And it's like, well, if they're interested, I'll see. And so far, so good. It's been cool. And it's kind of cool to go back through memory lane too, to, you know, kind of relive all that shit.
Yeah, man, your channel is really cool. You got all kinds of different stuff on there. So I'm going to link all your stuff below. I'm going to link your YouTube channel. It's Vincent Crowley Music. Go on there. He's got some great stuff. He does Q&As. You can tour his dungeon, which is in right now. You know, I'll link your all your Facebooks and your Instagram, and, you know, any place where we can get your merch, anywhere where we can follow what's going on with the band, you know, tour dates, all that stuff. I'll link it below. And
appreciate it, brother.
Man, it was a pleasure having you on, and I can't thank you enough, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. That best of luck.
All right, same to you. We'll see you.
Cheers.